In the summer of 1921, there existed a place in America where black families owned their own hotels, their own hospitals, their own law firms, their own banks, their own movie theaters. A place so wealthy, so self-sufficient, so unapologetically black that Booker T. Washington himself called it the Negro Wall Street of America. It had taken 14 years to build. It took 16 hours to burn to the ground. Over 1,200 homes, 35 blocks of black-owned businesses, gone. And not a single person was ever charged. Not one arrest, not one conviction. For one of the deadliest racial massacres in American history. This is the story of Black Wall Street, and I promise you, what they left out of your history books is the most important part. To understand what was destroyed, you first have to understand what was built. It's 1906, Tulsa, Oklahoma. A man named O.W. Gurley arrives in a town that most people haven't heard of. He's a school principal. He's educated. He's black. And he carries with him $500 in savings and one idea: that black people needed to build for themselves because nobody else was going to build for them. He buys a piece of land on a street called Greenwood Avenue. And then he does something almost no one expected. He sells lots, exclusively to black buyers. No white ownership, no white landlords. Black-owned land, black-owned buildings, black-owned futures. Word spreads fast. Within a year, Greenwood Avenue has a grocery store, a rooming house, a school. Within 5 years, it has a hotel, a bank, a law office, and a library. Black doctors are treating black patients. Black lawyers are defending black clients. Black teachers are educating black children. The money that black families earned stayed inside the community. It circulated. It compounded. It grew. This was not an accident. This was strategy. By 1921, the Greenwood district of Tulsa had over 300 black-owned businesses. The strip on Greenwood Avenue became so wealthy, so concentrated with black excellence, that Booker T. Washington gave it a name that would last forever: Black Wall Street. Now let me introduce you to the people who built this place, because history has a habit of giving you the tragedy without the triumph. And you need to understand the triumph first. J.B. Stratford, the son of a formerly enslaved man. He studied law at Indiana's Oberlin College, moved to Tulsa, and built the Stratford Hotel, a 54-room luxury hotel that was, at the time, the largest black-owned hotel in the United States. He believed, and wrote publicly, that black people must pool their resources, that individual success meant nothing without collective power. He wasn't just wealthy, he was radical. Lula Williams. She and her husband John built the Dreamland Theater, a stunning cinema that seated 750 people. They also owned a confectionery, a rooming house, and a garage. Lula ran it all. In 1921, she was one of the wealthiest black women in Oklahoma. Not wealthy for a black woman, just wealthy. Dr. A.C. Jackson. Called by the Mayo Clinic, the most respected medical institution in America, the most able Negro surgeon in America. He didn't work at a white hospital. He worked in Greenwood, serving his community. He was brilliant. He was respected. He was beloved. And then there were hundreds of others: dentists, pharmacists, tailors, jewelers, photographers, real estate agents, insurance brokers. These were not poor people scraping by. These were professionals, entrepreneurs, and visionaries who had, against every system designed to stop them, built something extraordinary. At the peak of Black Wall Street, the average dollar circulated within the Greenwood community for up to 36 times before leaving. In white neighborhoods across America, the dollar left almost immediately. The difference was ownership. The difference was community. The difference was intentional economic power. Now ask yourself, if this community was this successful, this self-sufficient, this powerful, why have you barely heard of it? Here is the part they cut out of the textbooks, not because it wasn't important, but because what comes next reveals something about America that is still uncomfortable to say out loud. Stay with me. May 30th, 1921. A 19-year-old black shoe shiner named Dick Rowland steps into an elevator in downtown Tulsa. The elevator operator is a white woman named Sarah Page. Exactly what happened next has never been fully confirmed. Some say he stumbled and grabbed her arm. Some say she screamed when he accidentally stepped on her foot. What is confirmed is this. The next morning, the Tulsa Tribune ran a headline that said, "Nab Negro for attacking girl in elevator." That headline was a match thrown onto gasoline. By afternoon, a white mob had gathered outside the courthouse where Rowland was being held. Armed black residents from Greenwood, veterans of World War I, came to make sure he wasn't lynched. Tensions exploded. Shots were fired. And what followed would become one of the most savage acts of racial violence in American history. The white mob, which grew to include thousands of men, some of them deputized by the police, moved into Greenwood at dawn on June 1st. They didn't just loot, they burned, systematically, block by block, house by house, business by business. They used fire trucks, not to put out the flames, but to pump oil onto rooftops to make buildings burn faster. And then, and this detail is so disturbing that the state of Oklahoma tried to hide it for decades, airplanes appeared over Greenwood. Witnesses reported gunfire from the air. Some reported explosive devices being dropped. Whether they were used for surveillance or active attack, the presence of aircraft during the massacre has been confirmed by historical commissions. The National Guard was called in, not to protect black residents, to detain them. Thousands of black men, women, and children were rounded up at gunpoint and held in internment camps around the city. By noon on June 1st, 1921, it was over. 35 blocks destroyed. 1,256 homes burned. Over 100 black-owned businesses gone. The Dreamland Theater, rubble. The Stratford Hotel, ash. Dr. A.C. Jackson, the most gifted black surgeon in America, shot dead in his front yard while trying to surrender. Estimates of the death toll range from 100 to over 300 people. We will never know the exact number, because the bodies were never properly counted. Some were buried in mass graves that still haven't been found. The total property damage? An estimated $1.8 million in 1921 dollars. That is over $200 million in today's money. Wiped out in 16 hours. And the response from the city of Tulsa? They tried to prevent black residents from rebuilding. They seized the land. They proposed turning Greenwood into an industrial zone so that black families, even if they survived, would have nowhere to return to. It took community organizers, black lawyers, and grassroots resistance to fight that off. But no one was ever charged. Not one person. Not one prosecution. Not a single conviction. For the murder of hundreds of people, the destruction of a community, and the theft of generational wealth. Before we get to what happened after, and this part is just as important, if this story is one that deserves to be told, hit subscribe. This channel exists to bring Black history, Black wealth, and Black stories back to the surface. New videos every week. Now let's keep going. Here's the part that makes this story more than just a tragedy. It's also a crime of erasure. For nearly 75 years, the Tulsa Race Massacre was barely mentioned in Oklahoma history books. It was not taught in schools. Local newspapers archived their coverage. City records were lost or destroyed. Survivors were told to stay quiet. Many of them did, because they were still living in the same city, surrounded by the same people. Dick Rowland, the young man whose elevator ride started everything, the charges against him were quietly dropped. He left Tulsa shortly after and was never heard from again. J.B. Stradford, who lost his hotel and everything he built, was falsely accused of inciting the riot and forced to flee. He spent years as a fugitive. He was finally exonerated in 1996, 75 years later, after he was already dead. The survivors of Black Wall Street carried the weight of that night in silence for decades. When researchers began looking for them in the late 1990s, a Tulsa educator named Eddie Faye Gates tracked down over 200 survivors. By the time she finished interviewing them, 103 had already died. Their stories nearly went with them. It wasn't until 1997, 76 years after the massacre, that the state of Oklahoma formed an official commission to investigate what happened. Their final report, released in 2001, recommended reparations for survivors and descendants. The state legislature passed a bill, but when it came to actual money, to actually compensating the families whose wealth was stolen, it failed. As of today, no reparations have been paid. But here's what I need you to sit with for a moment, because there's a number that doesn't get talked about enough. Economists who have studied the Black Wall Street Massacre have tried to calculate not just what was destroyed, but what was stolen. Not just the buildings, not just the businesses, but the compounding generational wealth that would have grown from that community if it had been allowed to survive and thrive. That number, the lost generational wealth, runs into the hundreds of billions of dollars. Think about that. A community that was building something real, something generational, something powerful, was destroyed in 16 hours. And the ripple effects of that destruction are still being felt today, in Tulsa, across America. The racial wealth gap in America today, where the average white family holds 8 times the wealth of the average black family, did not happen by accident. It happened through policies, through massacres, through redlining, through mass incarceration, through systems specifically designed to prevent black wealth from compounding. Black Wall Street wasn't the only black community destroyed this way. Rosewood, Florida, Wilmington, North Carolina, Springfield, Illinois. Over 100 sundown towns across America where black wealth was dismantled by force. The story of Black Wall Street is not just history. It is the origin story of the wealth gap that exists right now in 2025. And the most radical thing you can do with that knowledge is know it. Teach it. Build anyway. Because that's what O.W. Gurley did. That's what J.B. Stradford did. That's what Lula Williams did. They built in the most hostile conditions imaginable. They built because building was resistance. They built because to not build would have meant accepting a future that someone else designed for them. The Greenwood district today still exists in Tulsa. Black-owned businesses still operate there. The history is finally being taught. the story is finally being told. And it starts with people like you, choosing to learn it, choosing to share it, choosing to remember. That is the story of Black Wall Street. The rise, the destruction, and the truth that was buried for 75 years. If this video taught you something, share it. Because the best way to honor the people who built Black Wall Street is to make sure their story outlives the people who tried to erase it. Subscribe for a new piece of Black history every week. We're just getting started. And in the comments, tell me, did you learn about Black Wall Street in school? Yes or no? I want to know.